What's up? It's been almost 24 hours since I've been here, and I'm so excited. Welcome to Day Drinking with Wes Hagen. It's Cinco de Mayo. So, hola and welcome. I'm glad you guys are here. Looking forward to another great episode of Day Drinking. If you've never been here before, you should know that Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays. Mondays, we talk a little bit about general wine ideas. We always taste a wine. Nita, very nice to have you. Glad you are joining us right now. From 4:45 to 5 o'clock, I hang out and we just drink and talk. And then I start the Instagram camera at 5 o'clock. And then so we are on a number of different Facebook pages as well as simulcasting live on Instagram as well. And today's subject is going to be Chardonnay. So we're going to taste 3 different Chardonnays at 5 o'clock. We're going to go through in order. We're going to have the Ballard Lane Chardonnay, beautiful bottle of Central Coast Chardonnay. Or is it listed as Santa Barbara? Yeah, it's Central Coast. And then we've got the J.Wilkes 2017 Chardonnay, which is one of the most I would say, has received more critical accolades than any wine that I've probably ever made, including a top 100 in the Wine Spectator, which was pretty cool. And then we will finish with the Barrel Burner, which sounds oakier than it actually is. But I thought that would be a good order, and we'll talk a little bit about order. We'll talk about Chardonnay's history. Where did it come from? What's our best idea about how it was developed as a grape variety? And Sophie and Fred Brander. So good to see you. And Fred, you've missed it a number of times. I've been talking about AVAs and within Santa Barbara County. And as many of you probably know, Fred Brander basically wrote and researched over a very long period of time, taking it incredibly seriously, the Los Olivos district, which is an AVA that sort of came it's the last AVA, I believe, that has been approved in Santa Barbara County. And it is an AVA that uses an eastern and a western boundary of existing AVAs, which probably freaked out the TTB because they just assumed all winemakers love to fight and make boundaries that basically attacked each other. And so I love the fact that when we were putting together, when I had finished putting together a couple of my previous AVAs, Ballard Canyon on the west and Happy Canyon on the east, that Fred used those boundaries basically to incorporate the Los Olivos district. So there was no argument, there's no overlap, and I think it makes us as Santa Barbara winemakers and AVA petitioners look really cool. So thank you, Fred. And if you didn't know, I believe Fred received the first great accolade of any wine in Santa Barbara County when I believe it was a red wine, won a gold medal or a best of show at the LA County Fair Wine Competition, which is the oldest, largest county fair wine competition in the United States, now known as LA International, and a competition where I judged for a little while. So Fred's been a judge for a while. I've known Fred from judging wine. I've known Fred from making wine. Steve Clifton used to work over there, and a number of my friends have worked for Brander. So you just can't keep me down. And if you don't know Brander wines in Santa Barbara County, you don't know Santa Barbara Sauv Blanc. Sauv Blanc, to me, really starts with Fred Brander and ends with Happy Canyon of Santa Barbara. I would say the beginning of Santa Barbara Sauv Blanc, you have to talk about Brander and the Pink Castle. And in the future of Santa Barbara Sauvignon Blanc, I don't think you're going to be able to talk about the future of Santa Barbara Sauvignon Blanc without talking about Happy Canyon. Happy Canyon was originally made as an American viticultural area to really focus on Bordeaux reds. Cabernet Sauvignon being the king. Of course, Cabernet Sauvignon is the king in the United States. Why is Cabernet the king? Because it has everything that Americans want. It's got Big Mac milk and French fry. It's big, it's rich, and it has basically everything that people want. So I always forget. I love, and Anthony, so glad to have you here. Michelle's back in the house, and Dawn and Tommy, and to you, he's got the Espolón. He's ready for some margaritas. I believe that tequila is far too precious to mix on a regular basis. I've never blended my Fortaleza because it is my precious. I will blend Casa Dragones, which I think is actually a more expensive. It's almost twice as expensive as Fortaleza. This is about a $45 bottle of silver. Casa Dragones goes usually $75. I've seen it for as little as $60, but usually you see it from $60 to about $100. Fresh lime juice, 2 shots of Casa Dragones, and then I don't use Cointreau. I use a little tiny splash of aged Saint Germain, which is elderflower liqueur. And this Saint Germain is probably 9 to 10 years old, and it just gets a little bit funkier and more interesting every year, a little bit more oxidized, and I just love how it reacts to my famous 3-ingredient margarita. Margaritas should only have 3 ingredients, and that is if you use Cointreau or a little bit of something else. But basically lime juice, tequila, and a splash of some type of liqueur that you want. Anything else is unimaginable. And if you bring, us sour mix to my margarita party, we're gonna have words, because that is just culturally profane. Nikki, what's up? I just told, and I'll tell Chanda that you're gonna be on for her birthday show with the 2013 Chanda's Reserve Chardonnay, which is a week from tonight. So a week from tonight, we're gonna have a special show. You'll have something far more interesting to look at while I'm talking, which will be my wife, and she'll be talking a little bit too about her 15, 16-year history making wine at Clopepi. We're going to taste the 2013 Chanda's Reserve Chardonnay that we'll talk about and have lots of fun. And then one thing that's incredibly exciting is this Friday. If you like beer, and even if you don't like beer, we're going to have one of my favorite guests and one of my favorite human beings in the world live here on Zoom, and that will be also simulcast to the J.Wilkes Wine Santa Barbara Facebook page, and that will be Jason Osborne, consulting brewer for Captain Fatty's, and probably the most knowledgeable beer mind I've ever known. If you're ready to geek out about beer, and we're going to talk a little bit about all the basic styles of beer. So what's a lager? What's a Kolsch? What's a Pils? What's a stout? What makes a New England style hazy IPA hazy? How many different ways of doing it are there? What's an IBU? These are the questions that we're going to be asking, and getting some really amazing direct answers right from one of the most brilliant minds I know of, and really looking forward for Jason, who just confirmed this morning. So super excited about that. And then the next week, we're going to have Michelle Ball on, and we're going to do tequila versus mezcal. And that's going to be awesome. Can't wait for that. I'm going to probably have to go and pick up a little mezcal sampler from her front doorstep with gloves and a mask on so I can taste. She has like 100 mezcals at her house, and I just can't wait. And then the following week, I've only scheduled out 3 weeks thus far. Matt Kettman. Yes, Matt Kettman from Wine Enthusiast magazine. Matt Kettman is the editor-in-chief for the Santa Barbara Independent, and also does all the rating of all the Central Coast wines for the Wine Enthusiast, which is considered by most one of the top 3 wine publications in the United States. So we're going to have a lot of really cool guests coming up. We're going to have a lot of good conversations coming up. But for right now, I only have about 5 minutes before I fire up Instagram and really get into all this Chardonnay. So I will, let's all celebrate a sort of a random, if not unimportant military victory in 1862 on this day, Cinco de Mayo. General Zaragoza was able to beat the French just long enough that he was able to celebrate, die, and then a couple years later, the French came back and kicked their butts. So I don't really understand, besides, and obviously this is probably the first Cinco de Mayo any of us have ever had where we're not stoked to have our house packed with Coronas. But that is what it is. So we'll have to take what we can today. And I know that nothing can exist in tequila that can harm a human being, except maybe ethanol for someone who can't take it. But you know what? I'm a big boy. So, hey guys, happy Cinco de Mayo. We made it this far, right? May the 4th, Cinco de Mayo, boom, boom. Here we go. So I invite all of you guys to have a fabulous, fabulous Cinco de Mayo. I hope you guys are all having some delicious Mexican food delivered. There's some probably Mexican food restaurants in every city in the United States that need your business right now. I've got 2 of my favorites basically on speed dial. So I already had a burrito for lunch, so I don't know if that's just taking it overboard, but a little, a little El Pastor or a little Chile Colorado. It's sounding pretty good right now, right? So here we go, guys. We're day drinking. We're having some fun. Toshio, it's so nice to have you here. All right, guys. All right. So we got Tommy and Christy, and Michelle's back. And Michelle's got her barrel burner Cabernet Sauvignon with a salad of root vegetables and avocado. That is so healthy. Sounds delicious. That's awesome. Right on, right on. All right, before I forget, down the hatch. And because I don't trust myself with such a beautiful bottle of tequila so close to my elbows, I will put the cool topper back on there just in case it falls. I can potentially save a little bit of tequila for that too. Awesome. So yeah, J.Wilkes 15 Chard. So Dave Rominger is having some 15 J.Wilkes Chardonnay, Santa Maria Valley. It's the only Chardonnay we made that year. We're actually starting to make a little bit more Chardonnay in the world. 2013, once I came in 15, we blended the Chanda's Reserve Chardonnay. And of course, we also did a Paso Robles Chardonnay for the Gold Medal Wine Club, which was a kind of a private / control label that we did for a large wine club company. And it was so good that we bottled up a couple hundred cases for the tasting room. And since that, it's gone. So, I mean, that was 18. So our 18 Chardonnay Paso Robles is gone. And now we are looking at a little bit of different labeling. Got some different labels. I don't know if you were here seeing the 2019 Pinot, but the Pinot Blanc got a brand new label, and everything's going to get a brand new label. Everything in the J.Wilkes world is going to have the same color label. And I keep noticing. You might notice I lit a Mexican-style votive candle in back of me. Can you tell what saint that is from there? Probably not. I thought this was appropriate. It's Saint Barbara. That's Santa Barbara. So if you never knew, Santa Barbara, there she is. So she is burning and burning bright, and we are well taken care of as Saint Barbara glows softly for all things. She must be the saint of very beautiful and overpriced, if not incredibly expensive houses. It's my wife and I, after we left Club Pepe, went down to Santa Barbara to see if maybe we couldn't find something in our price range, and even a tiny little sort of condo or something like that, or quadruplex. I mean, we couldn't find any place to let our dogs run, and the cheapest place we could find, even back before the real estate market took off a little bit more, this would have been 14, 15, and probably 2016, was $800,000, and that was for a tiny little townhouse. So, yeah, Santa Barbara, love the saint, love the place. Probably never make enough money as a winemaker to live down there. My wife was born there. She loves it. Her dad still lives down there, and we still have good friends and family in Santa Barbara. It's a fabulous place. It's probably one of the greatest places to grow any type of fruit tree, shrub, any type of agriculture or horticulture in your backyard is going to be amazing. Cool. We got about a minute and a half. So if you want, feel free to go get your glass full. Let me know where you are, what you're drinking. Peter Rogers, sir, welcome. Hope everything is well with you, and hope to see you again up in your house in Paso Robles again soon. Chan and I were just talking about getting up there and having some fun sometime soon. So really, really looking forward to that. And we've got Tommy's talking a little bit about Wine Club. Tommy, thanks you so much for taking care of us like that. And if you have any questions, you can always send one over to Tommy Schmitz, who's right over here on Facebook watching. Ballard Lane Sauvignon Blanc with green chili cheese bread snack. Sounds very snacky. Everyone has a tequila story. Everyone has a tequila story. You know what? Let's see, do I have a tequila story? I've not had the opportunity to become I don't really have a problem with tequila. And one major reason is I've never drank tequila to excess. I've drank vodka to excess. I drank brown liquor to excess. I drank specifically Wild Turkey, and I don't get along. As well as, what was that awful stuff? Southern Comfort. I drank a bottle of Southern Comfort one night camping, and there was a freak snowfall that collapsed our tents. And I had to wake up in a Muppet Baby sleeping bag and convince 4 other guys basically in good sleeping bags in 6 inches of snow up by Big Bear, that it would be a great idea for us to break camp at 3 a.m. and get out of there because I was in danger of freezing. And I didn't get sick on SoCo, but man, just that whole thing. We did manage to get back to the University of Redlands campus at about 7:30 or 8 a.m, at which time I had to fulfill my promise to all those people. And I won't tell you what it was, but at the time it was illegal and it cost me about $200. But we did get home. We did end up being safe, but we did actually leave a tent up at one of the crossings there. So I apologize. That was my fault. I think Jason Green and I decided it would just be smarter just to leave it there. Tequila, though, Tequila and I have always had a really good relationship. I've never felt a different type or quality of intoxication as a result of tequila. So I'm not exactly sure why people sometimes consider that tequila is somehow different in that way. All right, I'm going to go live right here on the old Instagram. Here you are. Welcome, everybody. So it is 5 o'clock, which means it is time for Day Drinking with Wes Hagen. We're done with our foreplay over here for Cinco de Mayo. We've been talking a little bit about beer, a little bit about Mexican culture. So hola and happy Cinco de Mayo. So glad you're here. I've already had my delicious shot of tequila, so I am primed, ready, and rocking. We're going to talk about Chardonnay today, and I am completely and totally stoked about everything. I see Eddie Gray, Kent Pierce. If you've ever had Kent's Red, which is one of our wines, named after Kent Pierce, one of J.Wilkes' sailing buddies, and certainly one of his best friends. So we've got Beverly coming in. Eddie Gray's drinking some Tijuana Sweet Heat. I do not know that. It might be beer. We got Mark in the house. So glad to have you, Mark. That's awesome. And as you know, it's Tuesday, which means a slightly shorter show. So generally on Mondays, we talk a little bit about a general wine education. Yesterday, we talked about the production of rosé and the idea of Paleolithic rosé, maybe the first wines that were ever made in history that have been discovered either in Tbilisi, Georgia, all the way to Areni, Armenia, from about 9,000 years ago to about 7,000 years ago. Clearly, a lot of those wines would have looked exactly like a nouveau rosé, a rosé that would have been consumed very, very shortly after it was created by foot stomping, allowing the juice to run down a stone sort of corridor into an underground clay-lined bunker where the juice would have been fermented with temperature control. So yes, 9,000 years ago, the genius of human discernment had already created temperature-controlled fermentation of wine. This is back in the Paleolithic, in the Neolithic. So in the New Stone Age, we imagine people whacking each other over the head and dragging people into caves and stuff. No, they were making wine. They were making wine on purpose with fairly significant technology. As far as baskets, we assume they were probably using some type of basket because of the shape where we were seeing. And as that juice would come out of the basket, it would trickle down into a little basin. And then what would they throw in for yeast? They didn't have to. It was already yeast on the skins of the grapes. So the yeast was actually, they just assumed that what a nice god or gods that would basically allow grape juice to just turn into something that made human beings feel great. There was actually, but when we talk about yeast, I have to tell you one quick story about yeast in the ancient world and specifically in Egypt. One thing we keep finding in wine in Egypt, which had to do not only with the Egyptians, but the Canaanite culture who brought wine culture to Egypt and down through the Nile Valley and into the hinterlands of Egypt. Why do we know this? Because in 1920, about when Howard Carter dug up King Tut, we found all these jars of wine in Tut's tomb, and the wines had basically the writing of the Egyptian winemaker who made the wine for King Tut, and then the vineyard designations were all written in the Canaanite language. So clearly, the viticulturist and the cultural introduction of wine into the Egyptian culture was certainly from the Canaanites. Why the Canaanites? They had a magic ability. The Canaanites could travel the entire ancient Mediterranean world because they knew how to make boats out of Lebanese cedar. So if you can make a boat out of Lebanese cedar, you could get around the entire ancient world, and you became one of the dominant trading cultures. You became like the Phoenicians and the Canaanites, and one of the most important tools that you had was viticulture, how to grow grapes, which you could basically pimp around the ancient world. And also they knew how to make wine in a way that was kind of like the best techniques for making wine in the ancient world. So Canaanites and the Phoenicians, got to give them a lot of credit. They were doing a heck of a job. All right, let's jump in. Fortunately, the first wine, a beautiful Chardonnay from Ballard Lane. These wines are all available at millerfamilywines.com or millerfamilywines.com with the promo code DD50. You get until I think next week from Friday is when the 50% sale really goes away. So you can get this beautiful 90-point Chardonnay at millerfamilywine.com right now with the DD50 promo code for $7.50. I want to say this right. $7.50. And the DD50 will also get you $10 a case flat rate shipping, which is about half of what we pay. So not only are you getting 50% off the wine, you're getting 50% basically off the shipping, if not a little bit more. So buy a couple cases. This Chardonnay is fantastic. Don't miss the Smashberry Rosé. I keep saying it, but it's my favorite wine in that $7.50 sale. So we're going to start with some Ballard Lane Chard. And if you've watched me before, you know when I open a screw cap, and I love Stelvin closures. I think they're fantastic for wines under 15 bucks. If you didn't know, Penfolds has been putting Grange under screw cap since the 50s to assess how wines age under screw cap, and we might see the Grange coming out as one of the most expensive red wines ever put under screw cap. They continue to put them under natural cork, but also Chateau Lafite Rothschild, starting in 2000, put some of their first growth Bordeaux, thousands and thousands of dollars per bottle, experimentally in Stelvin as well. The idea was, as they said, they were going to taste those wines in about now 2020 and evaluate how first growth Bordeaux has been influenced by a screw cap closure. So we might in the next 2 years, 3 years, see the first $1,000 bottle of wine under a screw cap. And I'll tell you what, if I was spending $1,000 on my own wine, and the few times I've tasted first growth Bordeaux, I've relied on the kindness of strangers. If it was my money, I'd want it to be under a screw cap, or at least a DM closure. So no, it's really, really important to know that the DM or the Stelvin closure really is an amazing technology. And 2,000 years we've been putting dead pieces of tree to close jars and bottles of wine. I think it's time to get away from cork. All right, so I always open my screw cap bottle from the collar, give it the crack, pop the top, never cut your hand. Wow, I even brought a glass tonight. It's like I was planning this. Show prep. With producer Chanda, we do go through what I'm going to talk about, and then I forget about it and go off the cuff. Without notes, without a spit bucket, without a net. Here we go. So we're talking right now. This is going to be the 2017 Ballard Lane Chardonnay. You can see it's got some pretty decent color. Showing some golden color. Is that a result of oxidation? No. That nice bright gold color is usually an indication of oak treatment. So obviously this one was in contact with oak for long enough that it absorbed some of the oxygen in the oak. Whatever you put in wine, it's not only the surface area that touches it, but whatever's in between the pores of the oak, the molecules of the oak, is going to be gas. There's going to be lots of gas in that. There's going to be oxygen. There's going to be nitrogen. So when the wood is in contact, not only if it's in a barrel does it absorb a little bit of oxygen from outside the oak, but the oak in the wine itself, or touching the oak itself, is actually giving off some amount of gas exchange. Some of that gas is oxygen, and when oxygen touches wine, it gives it a little golden color. So Pinot Blanc never touches oak. As a result, it is a much more bright, light straw color. This wine is given about 35% new French oak equivalent, and as a result, it has that nice golden color. Now, when we talk about Chardonnay, we're going to imagine the first thing we're going to be smelling is a little bit of toast, a little bit of oak, some butter, maybe some green plum, which is very, very common. I've just recently picked up some green plum so I can start giving myself the idea of what it actually tastes like. So let's jump right in. So Ballard Lane, this is usually about 15 bucks on the shelf. It's a great everyday drinking wine, and the Miller Family Wine Company, to help you celebrate some extra time with the people in your house, is also helping you put together a small wine cellar in your house, because what I've learned in this situation is everyone should have maybe 100 bottles in their house before something like this starts. Unfortunately, I did, because I've been collecting wine for 20 years. But if you don't have maybe 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 cases of wine in your house, might be a good idea to do that. I mean, what a weird moment that the people that had it right were generally hoarders, and doomsday preppers. It is what it is. It's a beautiful thing. But hoarding wine, especially wine being a beverage that can last 5 to 10 years in your house, as long as your house doesn't get too hot, it's a beautiful thing. So I've counted the wine in my house. I still have over 200 bottles. I should be okay to do this show in perpetuity. I also know a couple places where I can go get some wine. I also live within 3 minutes of our winery here in Santa Maria. So we're probably in good shape. You will not miss that this is Chardonnay. This is like so classic. It's fig, it's apple, it's green plum, toast, a little bit of beautiful perfume. There's almost like a little bit of like musqué, like almost like a Sauvignon Blanc character in the nose, because it's really, really perfumey. It's incredibly pretty in the nose. That, or I'm just really damn thirsty, because you know the greatest spice in the world is hunger, and the only thing that's sexy is willingness. So perhaps I'm thirsty, and this wine is just showing me a proper amount of willingness. So thank you, wine. So freakiest thing about wine is when you put it in your mouth and you have a pleasurable experience, you can just not even think about it. You could be at dinner, you could be with the people you love, you could be just drinking the wine, not really thinking about the wine, or you can really take the wine at its face value, what it tastes like. Is it bright? Is it soft? Is it fruity? Is it lean? Is it tight? Is it generous? Is it young? Is it old? That's one way we can go. And these things are going to pop out regardless. You can usually tell those things even if you're not a wine expert. Where wine expertise really, where the rubber meets the road, is when you really want to understand a wine, just like you really want to understand a poem. You really want to understand a novel. You really want to understand a movie. And some movies, some wines, some poems are really not meant to be studied, and some really are. But the thing about wine is you can put some of that study and focus as a wine lover and a student of wine into a wine and go for a trip. And what I mean is, if you pay attention to it, if you don't know where it's from, you can imagine and play games with yourself to try to imagine where it's from. Was it a hot year? Was it a cool year? Was it sandy soil? Was it clay soil? All these things have their own flavor profile, and we'll continue talking about those here on Day Drinking. But to me, the most important thing is the deliciousness, and does the wine react to what I need from it? So if I need the wine to cleanse my palate in between bites of shrimp scampi and linguine, it's going to do its job. Thank you, wine. You're doing a good job. Now, the odd thing, if I'm drinking a $20 wine, I'm going to drink it different than a $2,000 wine, because if I'm drinking a $2,000 wine, I am going to extract $2,000 worth of interest from that glass. So if I'm drinking a glass of wine from a bottle that you can buy right now for $7.50, you'd think it would be sort of digital, 0 and 1. Is it good? 1. Yes, that's all there is to it. This one actually has a lot to say. It was made, let's see, so the Ballard Lane, 2017 would have been made, let's see, by Richard Shelton. So Richard Shelton was Texas born. He's made wine pretty much all over the world. He's made wine, he studied down in Christchurch, New Zealand, so he really understands cool climate. He also worked for William Sellium, so he certainly understands Pinot Noir. This wine to me shows a pretty amazing level of balance, and there's even a little complexity to it. There's oak, there's fruit, there's a little bit of minerals, there's some good acidity, it speaks, it has a voice, which is not something that a lot of wines at this price point can offer. So I'm actually enjoying it. This one was originally made as an on-premise only brand, which means you would never see it for sale on a shelf or on a website. It was restaurant only. We're in a brave new world right now. So we have opened up, and we did actually before sparkling isolation, we've opened this wine up to on-premise or off-premise as well. So you can find this. You can find Ballard Lane in stores, in liquor stores, but it really also does a great job as a by the glass wine. All right, so here's the real question. Besides Richard Shelton versus Wes Hagen as winemaker, I like Richard Shelton's chance in that battle. Why is this wine? So if you got a good deal on this wine, if you bought a case of this wine, 29, 20, it would cost you about $16. So we're talking a little over, even with the great discount, this J.Wilkes 2017 Chardonnay. This is Santa Maria Valley 2017. So this wine won top 100 wine values in the Wine Spectator last year. It's had 91 points, 90 points. It's had I don't know what a point tastes like, but certainly this one is has a lot of accolades, and it's probably the most celebrated wine that my name has ever been on. So I'm very excited about that. Definitely more saline in the nose. I didn't really get a lot of mineral character from the Ballard Lane in the nose, but the nose on this one reminds me a little bit more of a wine that was grown on sandy or sandy loam soils with a high calcium content down in the subsoil. How the hell do I know that? Well, I have been growing grapes in cool climate on high calcium soil now for 25 years. And basically calcium affects wines thusly. So if there's high amounts of calcium in the soil, it's not like the calcium is absorbed by the vine and put into the wine, so you're actually tasting calcium like you broke up a vitamin in it. No. Calcium has a different effect. A grapevine determines how thick the skins of their berries are going to be by virtue of how much exchangeable calcium is available at the grapevine's root level. So if the grapevine has all the calcium it could ever need, 5, 6, 7, 8,000 parts per million calcium, like there are in some soils in Santa Maria and Santa Rita Hills, as in Chablis, as in Meursault, as in some of the greatest places around Montrachet, Pouligny-Montrachet, obviously limestone, not calcareous shale, not diatomaceous earth, but it is still exchangeable calcium. So what happens is that calcium is absorbed by the vine, and it gives the vine all the calcium it needs to form skins. So as the skins of the grape get thicker, the juice is actually reduced exponentially. This really matters. So there are really two precursors to minerality in wine. Number one is high calcium soil. Name me a mineral wine that is traditionally mineral that is not grown on high calcium soil. Either the Commigian, which goes right through Bordeaux, basically the Jura Mountains with all their limestone. You've got the calcareous shale, diatomaceous earth, and all of that. In the Santa Rita Hills, you have the oyster beds in the Chablis. You look at Saumur. You look at, think about any great Chardonnay or any great white wine region or red wine region that produces Burgundy. Red wines even have minerality. So that's sort of what it goes. The second precursor is low pH. So the lower the pH, generally the higher the acid. So pH at 3.0 is mouth searing. 4.0 is like a Napa Cab, soft and rich. Champagne, 2.8, 2.9, maybe 3.0. Some Chablis can get up to almost like 3.1 pH. And then you also have titratable acidity, which is measured, and most wines have between maybe 4 grams of titratable acid to 10 grams. So the titratable acidity goes from 4, very soft, to 10, mouth searing. pH, 3, mouth searing, to 4, 3.1, 3.2. Most Chardonnays, 3.2 to 3.4. Most Pinot Noirs, 3.4 to 3.6. Most Syrahs, 3.4 to 3.6. Most Cabernets, 3.5 to 3.8. Basically, pH will give you exactly how wine impacts your palate and your tongue. It's a measure of the hydrogen ion activity. So how fast the hydrogen ions are whipping around in your wine, you put it in your mouth, that's going to have an impact on the papillae and the flavor receptors of your tongue. Very important to realize. So this 2017 J.Wilkes Chardonnay is almost sold out. If you want some, go get it. Looks like the Pennsylvania Liquor Control Board is finally back on board to buying this wine out, and they will be buying every case that we have within about a week or 2 weeks. So it's nice to sell out a wine, but once you had a wine in your life, as long as I have, like the 17, I've been selling this for about a year, I've absolutely fallen in love with this wine, and I will secure a case for myself to put away because I think this wine probably represents the best wine I've made for long-term aging in the world of J.Wilkes. So I'm very, very excited about that. All right, we got one more wine, then I'm going to go back and Welcome all you guys. We'll talk a little bit about Chardonnay. So we had the Ballard Lane Chardonnay, $7.50 on MillerFamilyWines.com. We have the 17 J.Wilkes Chardonnay, which you can get at jwilkes.com or MillerFamilyWines.com. 6-pack, you're paying about $18. It goes down to about $15 on a case. It's $22, I think, on the retail side. And then the last, but certainly not least, wine that we're going to be tasting is Barrel Burner. The idea with Barrel Burner is we were going to have, Clay Brock, who was our director of winemaking until just a few weeks ago. He went off to do his own thing, and now we are happy to welcome Jonathan Nagy, who spent 20 years, about as much time as I spent at Clopepe, over at the Jackson Family Wines and specifically at Byron. Worked with Ken Brown, one of my biggest wine heroes in the world. And now we've got this very strong Ken Brown connection. Roxy Ward, who's another one of our blending winemakers, has worked with Ken for a long, long time. And now we also have Jonathan Nagy, who not only spent years learning to make Pinot Noir and Chardonnay with Ken Brown, but also ran Byron as the director of winemaking for almost 20 years, and now is the director of winemaking for Miller Family Wine Company, which means the wines are awesome now, but just wait until you taste those 2020s and see what Jonathan can do with these wines. Clay did a hell of a job. Jonathan Nagy, I'm extremely excited to see what he's going to be doing with our Chardonnay and Pinot Noir program specifically, and obviously helping me get the most out of that Pinot Blanc. Did you know, actually, that Pinot Blanc was constantly mistaken for Chardonnay in France and in a lot of places around the world? Back in the 70s, it turns out that a good percentage of all the Chardonnay that had been planted in the 60s and 70s was mislabeled, and it was Pinot Blanc. Pinot Blanc has a very, very strong genetic relationship to some of the same grapes that make Pinot Blanc or Chardonnay. So when you see a Pinot Blanc vine, for example, we have Pinot Blanc vines adjacent to Chardonnay at Bien Nacido. And when you go out there to look, what's the Pinot Blanc? It's very difficult to see without seeing the block labeled. This is Chardonnay, this is Pinot Blanc. The vines have a similar growth pattern. They have a similar bud break pattern. They have a similar leaf shape. They have a similar cluster architecture. The grapes tend to stay a little greener than Chardonnay. Chardonnay tends to be a little more golden. Best thing you can do is proper canopy management, and you look at those clusters, and the clusters that still have that kind of green cast to them, chances are that's Pinot Blanc. But Pinot Blanc was actually co-planted with Pinot Noir at Romani Conti Vineyard, which makes the best red wine in the world, arguably, until 1956. Till 1956, Pinot Blanc was actually co-fermented and co-planted with Pinot Noir at Romani Conti, which I find very, very interesting. Pinot Blanc originally, though, has moved out of Burgundy. You don't see it very often, and really, moved off to, basically be influenced in Gamay Blanc, which is very genetically similar to Pinot Blanc, but also Pinot Blanc moving to Alsace and the Alto Adige. And Chardonnay, there were so many rumors and so many stories about what Chardonnay is. And as most things, rumors persist, but science gives us the actual answer. And what did science tell us about Chardonnay? That it was related, like almost every other grape, to a grape that the Romans brought into south of France from Croatia, called Gouais Blanc. I love Gouais Blanc. It's just gooey. But it's Gouais, Gouais Blanc. I don't even know if I'm saying it right. I've always just wanted to say Gouais. So Gouais Blanc is one of the progenitor grapes. If you've been watching, you know that in my world, the progenitor grapes in this world that are responsible for almost every grape on the planet Earth that we recognize, we talk about, and we put in our glass would be Gouais Blanc, Clairette, Pinot Noir, and Cabernet Franc. You can add Muscat of Alexandria to that because it seems to have a pretty important history as well. This is the third Chardonnay that we're tasting. I've now got Barrel Burner. You may think Barrel Burner is sort of going to be a Rombauer clone, that we're going to be trying to put as much oak and richness into this wine as possible. We do not move to profane winemaking things with this. We're not adding oak tea. We're not putting lactic acid or butyric acid in this wine. We're giving it the equivalent of about 50% new French oak barrel treatment. And as a result, that will give the wine a richness and a ripeness. Well, a richness. Whatever comes from the oak, remember, I would call bouquet. Everything that comes from the fermentation is aroma. So aroma is produced by fermentation. Bouquet is produced by aging. So if you are aging a fermentation in oak, is that aroma or bouquet? It's bouquet, because it wasn't produced by the fermentation. It's the way that aging is influencing the wine. The way I remember that is bouquet is the flavor of, or the aroma of death. Bouquet is what's a bouquet of flowers? We cut a bunch of flowers, we put them in water and put them in our house, and we enjoy the aroma of them dying. So remember that bouquet is the aroma of entropy, and our bouquet is the flavor of entropy, and aroma is the flavor of life. Fermentation is life, and aging is death. So anything that's produced, bright apple, pear, baking spice, generally probably going to be aroma, leather, cigar box, cedar, even sort of aromas that could describe as barnyard, Brettanomyces or some type of Brett aromas. Those would also be definitely on the bouquet side. A lot of the flavor, I always like to say Chardonnay is the editorial model of the wine world. What the hell does that mean? It's not about the model itself. In editorial shoot, I've watched these shows with my wife enough. Editorial shoot, the model is supposed to disappear and become sublimated, and what comes out is the quality of clothing as art. It's not clothing as basically making sure you're warm, or when you go out, people don't look at your funny body. Couture is about making a statement, and Chardonnay is also about making a statement. Why? I really think that Chardonnay is more about the clothes we hang on her than her herself. It's a very neutral grape. It's a grape that really exhibits the place where it's grown, the heat, the cool, the soil, the oak treatment. Do you take it all the way through malolactic? And what the hell is this malolactic fermentation people keep talking about? Well, it's a bacterial fermentation. So if you have a wine and it's in some type of a vessel and you're aging it, chances are at some point this little Leuconostoc enos or Enococcus enos bacteria will actually touch the wine, either existed in the barrel from last year, or you maybe even put it in the barrel. And as a result, you're basically getting that wine. The malic acid starts being consumed by the bacteria, and the bacteria are basically giving off, nice way of putting it, lactic acid. You're changing the bright appley acids that you would get in a Sauvignon Blanc to sort of the creamy, seamless acids, the lactic acid that you would get in a Chardonnay. All three wines that we've tasted thus far are 100% malolactic. Chablis, 100% malolactic. Merceau, 100% malolactic. White Burgundy, 100% malolactic. Sauvignon Blanc, usually no malolactic. Viognier, we can have a little discussion there because it can go either way. Every red wine in the world, save one style, 100% malolactic. You would never put a red wine into bottle until it had finished malolactic, because it'll start bubbling and making fizz in the bottle, and that's what we want. But in general, the only red wine regularly kept from going through malolactic fermentation, besides a couple really small areas where they make a macerated sparkling wine, because you obviously wouldn't take that through malo, or maybe you would be Nouveau Beaujolais and carbonic maceration. Generally, Nouveau Beaujolais does not go through malolactic fermentation, and you can certainly tell because it has a flavor profile unlike any other red wine in the world. All right, so what do we think about this barrel burner? You know me, I made the first stainless steel Chardonnay in Santa Barbara in 2000. 20 years ago, I made a wine at Clos Pepe called Homage de Chablis. So that might get you an indication of how much I like oak in Chardonnay. Although, I've had Montrachets that were 200% new French oak, fermented in a new oak barrel, and then racked into a new French oak barrel. That were some of the best wines I've ever had. I do agree with what Brian Babcock told me in 1996. You can't over oak a wine, but you can under wine the oak. So if the wine has an incredible intensity, you can give it a lot of oak and it'll soak it up. But then the question is, why? To me, using oak in wine is like a chef decided to use saffron or salt or pepper or whatever. There should be a reason that we add this flavor compound to the wine because there is a deficit in the flavor. If the wine is perfect without oak, why are you going to spend $1,000 a barrel to make it taste like a French forest? Isn't oak making American winemakers sort of justify what they're doing with a French accent? Why can't we make American wine that just tastes like American wine? I'll tell you why. It's the same reason the French started using French oak, because the French didn't even use French oak until after World War II. Well, a couple of them did, but it was incredibly popular to French winemakers before World War II, the end of World War II, to use Quercus robur, which is the European white oak. Which French oak forests were they using to make barrels, to make wine in France before World War II? None of them. They were using Eastern European oak. They were using oak from Hungary. They were using oak from Slovenia. They were using oak from all over these areas. And why in the world are we so used to the flavors of French oak if the French never even used French oak? The answer is the Iron Curtain. When the Iron Curtain fell at the end of World War II, French winemakers recognized that their source of oak for barrels was gone. They were not able. So what they started doing was to try to find anyone who knew how to use barrels and to get them starting to make barrels in France with French oak. So the odd thing is, okay, and then there's the American thing, right? It's like, why do the Beatles not sound British? Because they wanted to sell records in America. Why does anyone try to like do anything? Is because they want the American market. So what ends up happening is the 1945, 1946, and the spectacular 1947 vintage were all placed in French oak for some of the first times in France. So when those wines were consumed by American GIs, they understood the concept of French wine from the perspective of what happened after World War II, because they weren't making wines in during the war. So as first wines came out, they were drinking them and loving them. And the flavor of French oak became part of the American tradition of understanding French wine. So when American GIs went back to the United States and we brought French wines back with us, and French wines started actually having some interest and some sales in the United States, these people were drinking wines that were sourced from French oak barrels. Oddly, the first barrels were ever used 2,000 years ago were French oak. It was, the Gallic people, the Gauls, and they were making French oak and bending them over wood to empty amphorae in the 1st century CE, Common Era, getting wine from Julius Caesar and taking it up the Rhone estuary in these hogshead style barrels. So barrels started as French oak, moved east, and then after World War II came back to France. And now we talk about limousine with forest. Did you know the word limousine is actually a forest in France and is given lots of respect? It's a fancy place because it makes the wood, makes some of the best barrels for Bordeaux wine. And then in Burgundy, for Chardonnay, Nicky Nelson, Nicky Palson. Nicky, you gave me everything I needed to know to learn to make the best Chardonnay, and that is the demi barrel. I believe they're made in Meursault. If you've ever stuck your nose in a brand new demi barrel, it's the I always say it's the 3rd greatest smell in the world. I'll go, my wife, white truffles, a demi barrel. It's just for domestic tranquility and for in vino veritas. It's a beautiful thing. There's definitely a little bit more oak in this wine than I smell in the J.Wilkes. The J.Wilkes wine is definitely a wine of place. This is definitely a wine of style. And the style is, let's put a fair amount of new French oak in this wine for people who really like the marriage of French oak and Chardonnay, which is sort of like, a piece of cheddar cheese and apple pie. It's a beautiful combination for an American sushi and soy sauce, which doesn't really happen in proper sushi culture. Asking for soy sauce at a great sushi restaurant in Tokyo is going to get you kicked out. But the flavor profile of how it blends together, the richness of the oak, the leanness of Chardonnay, the neutral flavor of Chardonnay being buoyed by all of this stylistic affectation, the oak, the flavor, all of these things are absolutely wonderful. 3, I would say in the end, my main point is all 3 of these wines show 3 totally different style. The Ballard Lane, a little more lean value. The Barrel Burner, rich value. The J.Wilkes Santa Maria Valley 2017, complex value, and one for the cellar or for drinking. I don't really think you need to lay down the Ballard Lane or the Barrel Burner, although I think you could easily do so for 5 years. Especially, I think that's a pretty good deal for a wine that's under $8 a bottle. But the 17, this is a wine I'm going to lay down. I want a case of this in my cellar, and I want to open a bottle every year until that wine is perfect, and then throw a party. That's my cellaring suggestion. Is I do cellar consultation. I help people build their wine cellars, whether their budget is $500 or $50,000. It's always fun to try to find what wines they drink, what foods they eat, what wines they like to have on a daily basis. And then obviously very, very important, how long are you going to keep the wines? Very important question to ask in a wine culture in America where 90% of the wines purchased are consumed within 48 hours. Okay. It's time for me to drink a little. You know, it's Cinco de Mayo. I don't do this very often. It's time. I recommend, if you have the capacity to do a shot right now, and this is going to be a shout out to every single person who left the house wearing a mask this morning, every single person who had to wear a mask this morning, keeping us alive, fed, healthy, delivered, whoever it is, whether you're, in the NFL trying to figure out how in the hell we can have a season this year, whether you are in the winery topping my barrels today so I can stay at home, prep for the show, whether you are in our shipping headquarters, making sure that people that order these wines get the wines shipped to them, whether you're my USPS delivery guy, my UPS delivery guy, my FedEx delivery guy. I know, by the way, I'm positive these people bring me my packages before your packages because I give them liquor every week. Every week if I see my delivery guy, I'm going to make sure there's an extra bottle of wine on the doorstep, and I'm going to make sure I point to it and say, I just sprayed that with 90% isopropyl alcohol. It is germ-free, and take that home and enjoy it. Oh my, here we go. Actually consumed within 8 hours. Thank you, Ross. It's absolutely correct. Ross Rankin, ladies and gentlemen, Imagine Wines. Give him a shot. And my high school buddy, Brett Long, is in the house. Brett, so nice to have you here, brother. I got a shot of tequila. I'd like you to join me, my friend. Brett Long, one of my favorite human beings on the planet. One of the most greatest humanists that I know. He's an amazing guy, and as a result of me being nice to him, I'm sure he's going to start talking smack immediately. Remember, Brett, this is a PG show. I know that there's kids in the room somewhere, and even though I've been known to use a four-letter explicative from time to time, I also have a very expensive and fancy English degree from a fantastic liberal arts university. And as a result, with the lexicon up here, somewhere between the cerebral cortex and the amygdala, I should be able to use a lot of words that aren't considered necessarily a curse word. And I don't want to curse any of you because we are all liable to be cursed right now. and Brett said if he can't curse, then maybe he'll be back later. Peter, what's up, Mr. Peter Yu? Peter used to help out at the LA County Fair wine competition where Fred Brander brought home one of the original golds. And I remember the first thing I ever saw Peter Yu, he also worked at Cabernet Collective or the Wine Collective down somewhere near skateboard park where I used to skateboard down somewhere near Pomona. And I used to see Peter Yu carrying like 100 glasses. Like he would carry like these glasses, like these amazing Riedel glasses, and he would stack them. He was holding them down here, but they would like go up like in this huge thing. And I just couldn't believe that anyone had the opportunity to be able to carry glasses like that. So I don't know what you did, Peter, but damn boy, That was some crazy stuff. Yes, Ross has another winemaker. Oh no, that Peter Yu? Like breakdancing Peter Yu? No way, dude. Peter Yu? I knew another Peter Yu in the wine industry. This is a Peter Yu I went to high school, and this kid was one of the best dancers at our school. This was in 1987 when like people at like school dances would make a circle and people would get in and pop and lock and stuff, and just like and Peter Yu was, I mean, he could have been rerun. He was so good at popping and locking. Dude, Ross Rankin, yes, the Rankins, obviously La Cañada Rankins. I know the Ross, your family member, the superintendent of La Cañada Flint Ridge School District, secret handshakes. Well, I mean, here we go. Just when I thought Peter Yu, yeah, we do need a dance off. Brett Long and Peter Yu are in the house over at Facebook. I mean, how does this stuff happen, right? I mean, Facebook is great and it's evil because it's great because all the people you want to hear from can find you, and all the people that you burnt bridges all the way through your youth and you may have left them without giving them their proper respect, or maybe even just jerk to them, they can always find you. Fortunately, I like to think I didn't burn a lot of bridges, and now I can watch all these folks come in. Yeah, Dr. Rankin, same spelling, was the superintendent of schools in La Cañada Flint Ridge in the 80s when I was there. Unfortunately, I went to La Cañada, well, fortunately and unfortunately, I went to La Cañada High School between 1983 and 1987, and my dad was my principal. So maybe that can explain a little bit much. So yes, and we've got Tom from Report. Happy Cinco de Mayo to you, sir. Sir will not need to use a Report on the Fortaleza tequila. Oh, smells like Jalisco dust. It smells like you just cracked open a fresh agave and you're just smelling dust and agave and all this beautiful stuff. If you have never, and I can honestly say, I've never been given a dime from the Fortaleza people, but I'll tell you what, if you've never had the Fortaleza tequila, you owe it to yourself to taste this. If you live in LA, go to, what is it, Top Line in Glendale. My people are from Glendale, and my people have been in Glendale so long we're not even Armenian. Much love to the Armenian culture, but there's more Armenians in Glendale than there are in Armenia. Thanks, Turks. That was very helpful. But the Armenians are one of the original winemaking cultures. Much love. They've done amazing things between Areni and today for the history of wine. But being someone whose family is from Glendale, we have a very close relationship with the Armenian community. So cheers. If I was a Tamada, what the hell is a Tamada? Well, I want to show you, not only am I from Glendale and La Cañada, but I understand a little bit about the culture. Tamada is an Armenian Toastmaster. So if you go to a formal Armenian event, you cannot lift your glass and taste any alcohol until you are told to do so by the Tamada. The Tamada is a storyteller. The Tamada is a Toastmaster. And the Tamada's job is to make sure everyone in the room is drunk enough, but not too drunk. And they have to take a taste and empty their glass every time everyone in the room does. So a Tamada is noted as being someone who can hold their liquor and recognize by their own sense of intoxication how intoxicated everybody else in the room is, to make sure everyone has a great time, nothing goes wrong, everything becomes wonderful, and the room ends up like the room in the Quran, believe it or not, where the Prophet Muhammad comes into a wedding and sees everyone drinking wine and gives blessings to the wine and said, clearly everyone here is having a wonderful time. Blessings be to wine. Blessings be to the gift of Allah, wine, because it makes us happy. Dude comes back like 4 hours later and the place is a wreck. It's a fiasco. What's a fiasco? A fiasco is actually the basket that holds a bottle of Chianti. So now you can understand what a fiasco is. But when he comes back to the wedding, and this is described in the Quran, which I actually read, it took a lot of coffee, trust me. And as a result, the Prophet Muhammad comes back to the wedding and sees that the place has become a complete S show. And as a result, makes a blanket statement that his followers should not drink because they cannot be trusted to drink. But what happens to you if you are a Mohammedan, if you are Islamic, the moment you die, if you go to heaven, if you go to paradise, the first thing you get is a wine bowl, and you can go over to an ever-flowing font of wine. And in the irony, of course, in the Islamic religion, and a lot of Islamic scholars would disagree with me, but screw them because I read the same Quran that you did, that heaven is a place to just get drunk all day and never have a problem with it. That's what it is. When you're on this planet, you're not trusted with alcohol. When you're in paradise, you drink all day. So take that with a grain of salt and try to figure out what is going on. Happy Cinco de Mayo, guys. Zaragoza was the Mexican general that beat the French in 1862 on this day. So 138 years ago, 198 years ago. You do the math. I went to a liberal arts school. It's difficult for my poor little liberal arts brain. So you figure it out. 1862. How long ago was that? You can tell me. But that's when General Zaragoza basically beat the French army during the Mexican-American War, and then 2 years later, the French came back and just basically ran them. Zaragoza had actually died at that point, so he had a great success, but no one really celebrates Cinco de Mayo such down in Mexico because it was a fairly minimal militaristic win that was basically reversed just a few hours later. All right, so Captain Noble Reposado for the Margs. Brett's drinking some margaritas. Margaritas aren't bad. It's for people who can't handle shots. I remember when Brett could drink me under the frickin' table. Zaragoza. No, actually, Zaragoza Zaragoza. Sounds like a dragon from World of Warcraft. Tequila makes me happy. Wine makes me happy. Happy Cinco de Mayo, Uncle Wes. Wow, I've got to be careful. I think I have young people watching me. I don't want to be a bad influence. That was water, kids. I'm just kidding. Obviously it's important for me to model proper alcohol behavior. We can all have fun. We can all talk and get passionate. What I find is a drink or two during this not only sets me to it's sort of the difference between me being on call, working, and off call, and part of my wife's life. It's very important. So I think what I'm going to do, yes, Peter Yu, the pirate Zaragoza sounds pretty dastardly. Not a great word, dastardly. Peter Yu, we got to reconnect, brother. I want to see if you still pop and lock, because that was good, fun stuff. Oh, Dominic, it's your birthday. Dom, thank you. You send me wine and I get it for your birthday. So maybe this Friday, maybe we'll open Zoom up a little bit earlier and do a little tasting of Dominic's wines from New York State. I would love to taste those wines. So happy birthday, my friend. I'm so glad that you are here. 158 years. I'm glad that Bob was went to a school that had STEM than I did. I'm very good at liberal arts stuff. Bob has got a game on that stuff. Jennifer, margaritas. Margaritas are such a beautiful thing. Probably, margarita is generally the name Gretchen. So Greta, little Greta, Gretchen. Margarita, little Greta. So I don't know what that has to do with anything except a very terrible and evil girlfriend in college named Gretchen. Do I have a wine fridge? What is it? The Sub-Zero. We had two very large Sub-Zero wine fridges in our dining room at Club Pepe. Held about 400 bottles between the two, and it was a very, very good brand. And I would say that in general, that it would probably, there's a reason why they're so expensive. They did a very good job. I know that the brands that are available at Costco, some people have good luck with or bad luck with. I would definitely go online and check it. But if anyone has any recommendations for Michelle about her your favorite wine fridge. That would be great. Peter Yu is talking about my 1986 white Scirocco that I drove in high school with white Ray-Ban sunglasses playing hacky sack on the quad. This is true. Listening to, like Tears for Fears shout at full volume because, I really thought those Alpine speakers pretty bitchin'. So much fun. Okay, go get some dinner, Peter. Awesome seeing you, my friend, and keep popping, brother. I freaking love that Peter Yu in the house and that there's another Peter Yu and that I knew two Peter Yus in my life. Oh, I'm crazy in the barrel burner. I love it. Saint Barbara is invoked during thunderstorms and is the patron saint of the artillery and miners. Goodness gracious. Oh, I love that. Just check in a little bit just to make sure if there's any questions that they have looked at and answered. And again, happy birthday to Dominic Profaci. I would say it's Profaci. Gosh, C's and I's are so tough in Italian. Profaci sounds right. But let me know if I'm embarrassing you. Oh, so Kit Kat doll. Now I know who you are. It's the Harley Adults and Brant. What's up, Brant? I hope everything's good at Prohibition Brewing. If you haven't had Prohibition, they're making some beautiful bottles in San Diego. And Brant is not only a wonderful thing. Let's see. Yes, Dead Lioness. Unoaked Chardonnay is about my favorite Chardonnays in the world. Look at us! What's up? Boom! Cece in the house on Instagram. Cece's one of my favorite little babies. Cece lives down in Ocean, California with the Harleys. She was born, I got to do a wine event in San Diego. She was born while I was staying with the Harleys. And I thought, Dan Harley being one of the greatest heroes of Marvel comics in the world, I thought it was very interesting that he named his kid CC Harley because I said, if that's not the name of a perfect comic book character that rides a motorcycle, kicks butt for safety and everything. So CC's on the camera, and I just have to give her some weight and some love because she is as precious gets.
I can hold it so he can see you.
Hey, Cece. Right on. Okay, guys. I will check. I will check to make sure that I've checked in with all of you guys on any questions I have to give. Other than that, hello down in San Diego. Hello, everyone who joined us tonight. I hope you had time day drinking with me. We had a little bit of a shorter show tonight, but we will be firing up tomorrow. What is on tomorrow? We're doing basically Cabernet. We're doing J.Wilkes versus Barrel Burner versus Ballard Lane. So we're doing the exact same thing tomorrow night with Cabernet Sauvignon. We're going to be talking about Cab is kind of one of the most important red grapes in the world, what it does, where it's grown, came from, and it's sort of its prince. Looking forward to that. And until then, I will leave it to you to do some independent study and day drinking. Make sure you do a good job. And as always, I will remind you guys to find someone in your social circle, in your neighborhood, and in your family might need a little bit of extra support and love in these different times. Reach out to them and see if you can do anything for them. If you need anything from me, please reach out and let me know. I'm happy to help any way that I can. I really, really appreciate everyone on Instagram, everyone from Facebook, coming and spending some time with me. Makes me connected. It makes me feel that everything in my head has been cast out into the neighborhood. And as I always say at the beginning of these things, if you can't be the one you love, can't be with the wine you love the wine, the one you're with. So have a great rest of your evening. Make sure to spend an extra hour tonight eating, drinking, and talking to the people that you care about. Love you guys. Thank you guys for being here. Really appreciate you. An awesome audience. And I will be here again tomorrow for Day Drinking with Wes Hagen. Please join me. Look forward to it. Have a great time, guys. See you soon.